Okay, welcome to our second Rangers Roundup podcast, where we use the international breaks to review the progress that the club has made so far this season, and briefly look forward and discuss any club news. As always, here to help me work my way through all these items is Matt. Welcome again, Matt.
Thank you for having me again.
And we also welcome Joe, who I'm hoping will offer an insight into the results and performances. Welcome to you too as well, Joe.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
Okay, let's start by recapping matches that have been played since our last Rangers roundup. Sheffield Wednesday against QPR was the first one on the 14th of September, and we drew that 1-1. We closely followed that up with the Carabao Cup match against Crystal Palace. We lost that 1-2. And then we had QPR against Millwall. That was a draw for us, 1-1. Then we had Blackburn against QPR. We lost that 2-0. And then we had QPR against Hull. We lost that one 3-1. That brings us round to last Saturday, 5th of October, when we played Derby, and we lost that one 2-0. Now, this translates into a fantastic total of 2 points out of a possible 15 from the Championship, and an exit from the Carabao Cup in round 3. We've only ever done that 8 times this century, made round 3, and here we are out again. So we'll get into the specifics and possible solutions later on in the podcast, but let's start by reviewing QPR's performance. So turning to Matt first, if I may, are these performances, and more importantly, perhaps these results for those 5 championship games and the round 3 Carabao Cup match, what you expected? I'm guessing they're not what you hoped for.
Definitely not. I think we've made the first 5 games before the first international break. We had a reasonable start. With the teams that we had, West Brom, Sheffield United included in there. These next 5 were sort of teams around us. You had Sheffield Wednesday, Millwall. Thinking that okay, we can get some wins in it here, especially getting off the mark at home. And the fact that we still haven't won a home game yet, and we're in October, that's the most disappointing thing. And the last couple of performances, Hull and Derby especially, a few worrying signs, I'm guessing. We just look very static and almost like teams have found us out, especially when we're losing. So, yeah, not crisis yet because it's still early on in the season, but I'm slightly worried.
Okay, yeah, I don't think you're the only one, judging by the thumbnail I was sent that we're going to be showing displaying up on the screen now. This goes on about 6 comments. Another spineless and gutless display. No drive, no passion, no direction, no idea. QPR are in big trouble. And the final 3 were seeing relegation performances. QPR have fallen off a cliff and gone from optimistic to depression in 8 weeks. Joe, does any of those match your feelings?
Some of them. I don't necessarily think we're in complete danger at the minute. If we're still in this position by November, December, then I would probably agree. But the fact that we're only if we take the international breaks as dividing up the season, to say we're only into sort of like round 2 of the season, I don't necessarily think that we should be as pessimistic as we should be. Say March, even like March, it would be a real disaster to be in this position. There is plenty of time to get this right, and there is another transfer window to be able to correct anything that is fundamentally flawed in the team. For instance, the centre of midfield. I think performance-wise, I actually think we've been poor all season. I'm yet to watch a game either live or or via televised means and feel that we're in complete control of the game. Even the games against Cambridge, I think we second half, for example, we were an absolute disaster in that and should really have lost that game. Yeah, I share the concerns that I am worried, and I do think if we lose the next one, then there will be knives out for Marty.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're in a sticky position. I would say that some of the teams we've played, you know, are probably better than I think people have expected. Millwall in particular, I think Millwall are a better side than people give them credit for.
Hull
You
as
know,
well.
yeah, Hull as well. Hull, they're a team that are going through a lot of transition with a lot of different signings. Blackburn are a very good team. They've got a lot of good players in the middle of the pitch that are able to control the game, and then they've got the odd couple of players that they can bring on and win you the game. I also think with Blackburn, they played a team the week before that went down to 10 men, and they didn't end up winning that game. And I think that Eustace will learn a lot from that by not introducing players like Cantwell and so forth, so that when the red card did come, he'd already had a trial run at winning that game.
Yeah, good point. I mean, I think another spineless and gutless display. I don't think that's fair for a start. There is no doubt they are trying. The majority anyway. But the comment that we've fallen off a cliff is absolutely true. Going from optimistic to pessimistic or depression, sorry, in weeks, absolutely right. I think there's not one fan here who's not really worried about how we are. I think the other thing is that how we're going to sort it out, and I think we're going to try and discuss this later on. Before I get going with my bit, I would say that Sky Sport have just released a video showing the Derby County's headed goal, which clearly shows Caden Jackson was standing in an offside position, potentially impacting Nardi's line of vision. That was something that should have been ruled offside, I reckon. It wasn't picked up by the assistant or the referee. Referee, I can understand. He was standing quite a way back, and he had lots of people bodies in between him. He was seeing it in reverse, but the assistant should have picked this up. I thought it was really poor. So, perhaps we're being just been a bit unlucky in this respect. Anyway, August was a tougher set of fixtures. I mean, Matt and I discussed this before, on paper at least. So it was reasonable to expect better results in September. The lackluster game against Wednesday with that last-ditch equaliser really was a precursor to how the other matches were going to go. The results just do not lie. We got worse as the matches progressed, losing the last three. So, Joe, is there any areas of the pitch or squad where we could be doing things differently and better, or do you believe that we're already moving in the right direction and only tweaks are needed to turn losses into draws and draws into wins?
It depends really. In some games, it is only the odd tweak, but I do think that the centre of midfield is fundamentally flawed, particularly with a trio of Field, Madsen, and Anderson. Anderson will press, but he presses alone and
Yes.
runs around a bit like a headless chicken, which leaves the other two
Along
exposed.
with Frey, yeah.
And then Madsen just disappears. I sort of don't know what he is.
I agree.
Even when I watch him at goal kicks, he pushes so far forward onto Michael Frey, even though they know we're going to go short. And then all of a sudden, when they do go short, Samfield then gets occupied, and we've got no outball to play through, and it's just bizarre. Judging on what I've seen so far, it's very difficult to think of too many worse players I've actually seen in the QPR shirt, because he just doesn't do anything.
Oh wow!
I don't really know what he does. He doesn't put himself about in the tackle. He doesn't go and get on the ball and look to dictate play. He doesn't press and squeeze players. So I sort of don't really know what he is. I think actually the management deserve a bit of criticism for this, because they've signed a player who, data-wise, his numbers look good. He started 27 odd games last season for Westerlo, and he scored 12 goals. So the data suggests that there is a footballer there. But it feels like that they've signed someone without really knowing what role they want him to play in the team, or they've signed him with a view to him replacing another player in the team long term. And if that's the case, then you wonder what conversations are going on behind closed doors. Because when you're paying the amount of money that we've paid for Madsen, the fans and everyone involved at the club will want an immediate return. And I think the 2 goals that he has scored are disguising the fact that on the pitch there is very limited return for him. You know, the goal against Derby, for instance, that's a simple 5-10 yard pass, and we get picked off and go 2-0 down. Now, even at that point in the game, once we've just conceded, just smack it. Just smack it long. If you're not competent enough to play that 5-yard pass, smack it long, because if they score in that instance like they did, that's the game done there and then. And
You're absolutely right.
I just don't know I just don't know what he does. He's just the passenger, and it causes so much trouble for Sam Field, because Sam Field is at his best when he's moving forward in vertical lines. But he's now being asked to really sit at the base of the midfield and dictate play, which isn't really his game. And when he does then get in those positions, the centre backs aren't prepared to give him the ball. And then when we lose the ball, he's overexposed because Maddison and Anderson are just not there.
Yeah, I get the impression, I could be wrong, I get the impression that the Field is very reluctant to move in any way forward in an attacking role because he's worried about the defence. And I think he's got every reason to be worried, to be quite honest with you. So I guess, Joe, do you think that the current tactics are working? If not, are the teams to blame or the coaches?
No, I don't think the current tactics work. I mean, he's stuck to a 4-2-3-1 rather loosely. And if you look at the systems that Marty's played across his career, he tends to play 4-3-3.
Yes.
Yeah. So I don't think the 4-2-3-1's working. Now, there is a wider point in wider football in general that actually maybe the 4-2-3-1 is beginning to disappear in the same way that the 4-4-2 was, in the sense that it's been found out in terms of its pressing patterns, in terms of when you lose the ball, 6 behind it leaves you a bit too exposed. The midfield isn't close enough, and such forth. But we play it to get someone like Chair in the team as a 10. Yes. And I don't understand, when he's not fit, why it's still being used, particularly when we're losing games. Now, the tactics have worked against Luton, for instance, when he made the substitutions and we went to a sort of warped back 3 where Smith tucked in as a wing back on the right side. And that's probably the most solid we've looked across the season. And I personally think that we're going to have to potentially go to playing a back 3, partly as well because when we play a 4, Steve Cook looks very exposed when the ball gets put in behind.
Yeah, he's slow. He is getting slow. I mean, no doubt about it. Matt, how about you? Do you reckon that Joe's right in all these areas, or do you think there's other areas that we should be focusing upon?
No, I agree 100%. It makes a good point about Maddison, because we get this guy in, and he does remind me of Dizelle. But I wouldn't he'll be disappearing in games, but I wouldn't notice him, and he would just be running around, but he wouldn't know when to press. He wouldn't know when to defend. It's sort of like you don't know where he's going to go. And in terms of position, you don't know where. Sometimes you see him out wide, sometimes you see him with Sam Field. He just wanders, and then the recent games has been put out of position. Hence why we struggle so defensively. Hence why in the transition, our back 4 are in trouble, especially Kirk and Dunn. They're not the quickest. So I agree on that point, and also agree on the shape. We need to change it. Derby was the biggest evidence that with a 4-2-3-1, we look so static, especially with possession. And we all know the old phrase, possession doesn't win you football games. Chances do, and goals do. But we wouldn't create any chances with the shape that we had. So when we changed to 4-3-3, 3 at the back, I know we was 2-0 down, but we were more positive. We were sort of getting behind Smith and Chair, was sort of getting on the flanks. We were more positive. So give 4-3-3 a go for these next batch of games, especially for Portsmouth at home, which is a massive game. We need to get the 3 points in that before, like Joe said, Marty's got some credit in the bank what he did last season, but it is a similar position that we were last season. And the thing is, I know it's still early on in the season, we can't afford to get too far behind in the table. The worst thing is trying to catch up. so early on. So, and with this team sort of transition, the new players that we've got in, it's not ideal to go, okay, we're straight in the relegation battle. So at the end of the day, Martin needs to figure out a shape where these new players can gel and sort of fit what they're suited to.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's just not working at all.
Yeah, I mean, for me, this looks to be both a player issue, caused by suspensions and injuries, resulting in roles being filled by people who are really unsuited to that role, and also a question of tactics selected. So I think you're both right. I mean, without a doubt, the suspension of Varane, it was stupid anyway, but because Colback was injured, it caused huge problems in defensive midfield. And it's obvious to all watching the troubles we have covering the centre back role, normally filled by Jake Clark-Salter, or Morgan Fox, of course, problems as well. Having Jimmy Dunn there initially leaves a weakness at right back, as Santos has struggled there. But luckily now we've got Ashby, who seems to be doing better there. But up front, you've got similar issues. You're persisting with covering Chair's absence, as Joe rightly said, in a 4-2-3-1. And the balance with Dembele, Sato, and Anderson just doesn't work as well as I hoped, it would do. And then you add in the tactics. I mean, even taking into account Madsen's struggles in the enforced defensive midfield role, we seem far too exposed too often to fast breaking sides. Marty wants attack. I mean, obviously that's what he's here for. That's his really ethos is attack. And he loads up the sides accordingly. But we need to look at a formation, I think, a 4-3-3, which you've mentioned, or even 5-2-3, in order to defend and get the ball moving continually and quickly upfield. That's what's not happening. We're continually under threat because we don't get it up the field. So I guess, Matt, if we're gonna let's go talk about 4-3-3. We're going to talk about that. Who would you have as your extra person in midfield? Would it be Dixon Bonner?
No, Dixon Bonner's not good enough for me. I think most fans have sort of, yeah, he's not good enough for me. Especially the cup game he had against Cambridge. He was really poor in that, and I think he won't be needed. I know he made an appearance against Hull as a sub, but that one was a game. The game was over at that point. Marty sort of gave up. He just gave him some game time. But 4-3-3, I think you've got to play to the powers of like Sato. All he wants to do is go at his man and go past him. You see at times against Derby, whenever they were moving the ball out wide, Sato wasn't tracking back because that's not his game, not his game at all. So you want him on the ball, wide as possible, and attacking the fullback. Same as Dembele. With the shape that we have, it almost like we haven't got the room for him to use his pace that he normally does, get on the half turn and run at the fullback and run into space. But the 4-3-3 on the transition, I believe we can do that. Anderson, I think, is struggling to. Sometimes he's been trying these Hollywood passes that just are nowhere near, and he's almost trying too hard for a bit of quality. Hence why he's getting a bit of backlash for the fans. I was at Derby at the weekend, and when he went off as a sub, he got a bit of abuse off the pitch because recently he's been really poor. But I think majority of that is the shape. There's no doubt he's got quality. He showed that towards the end of last season. But if he's there just as a roaming player in attacking areas along with Chair, I think those four in that area can be useful us in attacking areas going forward.
Joe, what about you? How would you fill that third position in midfield?
It's tricky because I don't look at the personnel and think that there's anyone there that I would trust. That's part of the problem. Like, I mean, it's early to be throwing them in, but I think Marty could have given us a bit more hope in that position if he just bled Kieran Morgan in for just 1 or 2 games, even against you're losing the game against Palace, bring him on for 10 minutes. It would have at least give us something different, a different option that we could pin our hopes to. Same with Alex Araha in the development team. And he was on the fringes of the first team last season. a horrendous injury and is now back. He might be an option too, but again, you're entrusting a young lad to go and sit at the base and then provide. It's tricky. I think that if you're going with a three, then you probably still play Madsen, even though what I've said about him before, you probably still play him because at least you can get him moving forward and running beyond Michael Frey.
So we'd have
But I
Field, you'd have Field and
I
Cole.
actually
Field and
yeah,
Cole.
Phil Colback when he's fit, but then there's no time limit that's been put on Colback so far, is there? You know, if that's a ligament damage in his knee, that can be a season.
Yeah, point taken.
Um,
So
I
therefore,
think
it's
I think
running.
actually a solution could be, and I'm hesitant to say this because I don't believe in Morgan Fox as a left-sided player in a four, but an option could be to move Kenneth Powell into midfield and
Really?
play Fox at left back. That could be an option. At least Powell will go and get the ball. At least his positional understanding of the position is superior to what we've got at the minute. His capacity with the ball is better. His defensive capabilities going the other way might afford us a little bit more protection. So maybe him chair and field as a three. That would give me more confidence, but then I would be worried about Morgan Fox at left back.
Yeah, sorry, I just come in there. I've
Yeah,
noticed Kenneth Parrott in midfield in recent games. I, but I have felt it has not worked because we haven't had that left-sided player to sort of come in and be stable. Madsen has done that sometimes, that left back role when Kenneth Parrott's gone in midfield, but I felt that we haven't had the impact of doing that yet. Maybe Fox is a good option to be on that left-hand side, just stay there, while Kenneth Parrott just roams around in that midfield to be that extra body.
Yeah, I think that's a possibility.
well, I must admit, on Hoops and Dreams, I'd already floated the idea of Jimmy Dunn going into midfield because he's got the heading capacity, he's got the movement. I actually think he's quite reasonable there. He'd do a good job, but I don't suppose
I
Marty will
think the
do it.
concern, I think the concern with that would be his capacity with the ball at his feet.
Yeah, maybe. He surprises me for a big boy. He's quite nimble. I'm not saying he's perfect, but just a thought. Okay, Matt, we're a fifth of the way now through the season. In case you didn't realise, we we are placed 22nd in the championship on 7 points only, with an average points gain per match of 0.77. You obviously don't think that's good enough, Matt?
No, no, I thought, like I said, the first international break, um, we had a reasonable points tally. We were sort of mid-table going into that. Now we've sort of just plummeted down because of recent results, and um, it's not good enough at this stage. Yes, we have faced some tough teams, ex Premier League sides, but we've got good results against them. But it always seems to be the QPR way where we get good results against like the likes of Sheffield United, Luton, but struggle against teams like Sheffield Wednesday and Millwall. I think we struggled to get momentum, but we had that win against Luton, and we had the international break in between. Then we had the Sheffield Wednesday game, and almost like momentum was lost big time. And ever since that game, it never felt nothing clicked after that. We was almost trying to find our form again. We haven't, and now we're sort of like retreating at the fact that maybe we're not good enough to play this way. Like Marty had a certain way last season towards the end of last season to be more solid, more compact, and get the odd goal. Now we're trying to be more expansive. All these new players coming in, it's like we were saying, it's not working, and I think it's not too late to change it up at this early stage to try and push up the table.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. Joe, this win rate would extrapolate to around about 36 points at the end of the season.
Laughable, isn't
Yeah, I somehow think that you won't be happy with that.
it?
I mean, obviously we've got to do something, and I'm sure Marty's fully aware of this. I mean, to put this into perspective, last season Birmingham were relegated on 50 points, and Huddersfield on 45. So this
Could
current
have,
form is unacceptable. There's no doubt about it. But I believe it must improve, and I think it will improve. I mean, Matt said earlier on, it's very early in the season. If you're going to have these problems, now's the time to have them. You just got to get over them. The problem, I think, is turning the squad's fortune around. And if you remember last year, Marty did the same thing again. He was back against the wall, and he really did focus upon defending, got the leakages of goals there sorted out, and then worked on scoring goals as well. Um, oh dear, I don't know. Let's move on to a general discussion about the players, Matt. Do you feel that the squad is gelling and interacting well on the pitch? That's a
No, I
leading.
don't see it. Yeah. I don't see it at all. Being at Derby at the weekend, there was a point. It was either the first half or the second half, and the ball was out of play, and Sam Field sort of called over the whole, basically like five, six members of the team to sort of like it's almost like try to refocus and reposition everyone to sort of like we're not almost like saying we're not doing anything. We're all static. We're not moving for each other, and there's definitely not a certain like communication. I think is really poor. Like at times where I see Steve took on the ball, no one's moving, no one's shouting to move positions. Um, I feel the element we're missing Jack Colback. He's a sort of character that will be very vocal in that middle of the pitch. Um, Also add that aggression as well. So we sort of miss him and Steve Kirk. I think is the only one that's going to try and do that in this process. I don't see anyone that's going to really um, come into that. And of course, we've got new players trying to jet into that, and it's difficult to, especially in this current form that we have, to get that positivity with the current results.
Yeah. I mean, Joe, what do you feel about the squad's interaction on the pitch? Could it be better? And if so, how?
yeah, I think so. But I think some of it is down to injuries. Um, for example, I don't think Cook looks as comfortable without a left-sided centre
Mm,
half next to
mm,
him. I also don't think he looks as comfortable with midfielders as advanced as they were. You think when Marty got us back to basics, if that's what we want to call it, towards the second half of last season, there were two natural sixes in Hayden on field, or Hayden and Colback, or Colback and field, two blockers that are going to stand their ground, which does help players like Cook, whose legs are beginning to betray him. I actually think there's sometimes a fluidity problem down the flanks as well. I don't think that the wide players necessarily have the relationship with their fullbacks as watertight as they should do. I actually think that's why Paul Smith should be in the team more consistently than he actually is, because there is at least a connection between him and Jimmy Dunn, more so than we've seen necessarily with Dunn and Dembele.
mm.
I think about the Sheffield United game in particular, Dunn was sort of perplexed at Dembele's not unwillingness to track, but his naivety in tracking players back in the first half. Second half, Smith comes on and they become our most attacking outlet on the pitch. And I do think when they play together, there is at least some level of understanding. Like we say, Field is babysitting two children in front of him at the minute, and he sort of doesn't have control on either of them. And Anderson he's a baffling player, isn't he? Like there's technical ability there, and
Mm,
he is able to then go and collect the ball off the players. But the fact he just charges around without any coherence, particularly when he loses the ball, it then causes, like we said earlier, it causes fluidity problems elsewhere. We did at least see when came on against Derby that there is going to be some sort of connection between him and the wide players we do have, particularly in Saito, that we could get 2v1s in on the left hand side that could cause teams a lot of problems. But yeah, I think fluidity wise, a lot of it is down to injuries. Like I say, Colback's getting on, but he's such an important player. Just to go and just drop off in a little pocket, get the ball, give it back, get the ball, give it back. We may not go too far up the pitch with him in possession, but it doesn't matter. It's about taking the sting out of the game, controlling the ball, making sure everyone's calm. And like Matt said there, he's an integral part of the team, and without him, we're in a bit of trouble. Um, And like I say, Clark without Clark sort of not the same, not the same centre half.
Okay, Matt. We're talking about the squad's interaction on the field and whatever. Are there any particular players that you feel could be doing better?
Uh, Definitely Anderson for sure. Um, there was enough quality last season to, the fact that he can get along with Chair in attacking areas and you know, I'm sure in time he'll get used to Dembele and Chair, but I think it all comes down to the shape. I think Anderson needs that space to get on the ball and go forward. I think now with everyone sort of static and Madsen sort of being in the way, I know we're blaming Madsen a lot in this, but it's
No,
sort
no.
of way his position wise. But Anderson's just trying too hard quality wise. But that's why we're all sort of reminding him that he's slacking and but there's no doubt there's quality there. So big improvement for him. Um, Needs to be going forward for sure. And I think everyone else that were in the door last season, I still find it hard to gel with these new players. And like we said, we had a we had a way of playing last season. Now we're trying to be more expansive and almost like we just don't know what to do and the way to progress and get up the pitch and what to do on the transition. We're still finding our way and yeah, we're struggling for sure.
Any ones there that you can turn around and say, "Oh, they fitted in nicely."
Uh, Dembele at first view for sure. Um, but again, I think as we've seen glimpses of his pace and the way he goes in the half turn, but again, almost like he has a run. There's no one there to support him. Fry makes a run going forward, but he ain't got the pace to keep up. Um, Anderson's not really there. He's not quick enough either. So Dembele at first, but I think he's finding it hard to connect with the other attacking players around him. So yeah, Dembele for sure. I think Sato still getting up to speed, physically still not there yet. Um, and yeah, Madsen, um, not yet. Varane at times he impressed in the Crystal Palace Cup game, but now he's been suspended. So um, see what happens when he comes back. So, but he's done okay, Varane. But I think Dembele out the signing so far, yeah.
I'm going to ask the same thing to you, Joe. I mean, are there any players that have really impressed you, and any that have made you want to hide under the desk or something? When you're watching.
Across the whole squad or just across the new signings?
I think really the players in general. I think I think we got to call it as what Matt said is right about the fact that there is a gelling that's not occurred properly. I don't think, but I think we've got to look at the whole team, haven't we? Really.
Yeah, I think Sam Fields had a good start to the season, even though he does look overexposed.
Hmm.
Um, he still equips himself. He's a solid 7, 8 out of 10 each time. I think the goalie's done all right, but I
Mm.
do. He does not fill me with confidence in the fact that he doesn't want to come for any cross whatsoever.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it
that
doesn't. Yeah.
that's a bizarre thing for a goalkeeper of his age to be worried about. Um, Powell's improved as the season's gone on. I think he started quite poorly. Once the window closed,
Yeah.
he's displayed a level of consistency. Aside from that, I think the standout performer for the season has been Michael Frey. We actually look like we have a centre forward of some repute. And I would agree with Matt that Dembele in flashes. I think Dembele, when he's got the ball, is not a problem whatsoever. He's fantastic. Like just once he's got it, but once the ball's lost and out of possession, I don't think he's disciplined enough in his positional play, and I don't think that his size helps, particularly when you're playing against men that are 6'4", 6'3". He looks like a child running against him. Now that's not his fault. There's nothing he can do about that. But it is a worry when we do lose the ball that him and Saito as well, they look weak out of possession. But I just want to add as well that we talked earlier about um, tactically what would we do? Would we go to a 4-3-3? I actually think I might go to a 3-4-3 and
Ah.
play Dunn, Cook, and Fox as a back three. You at least then get a left-sided player in the defence.
And
play
with
Powell and Ashby as wing backs. And then I'd actually would bring Kieran Morgan into the midfield because I think you can in a four like that, you can keep his game very simple. You hold your position, you listen to Steve Cook behind you, you listen to Samfield next to you, and you give the ball to Dembele. And I think, it might see a level of consistency there.
yeah, I can't argue with that. It's a bold, very bold one, but yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
That's a
Um,
good shout. Good shout for sure.
yeah. I, I think the ones who've pleased me have also been the ones who've disappointed me. Anderson, Dembele, Smith, and Sato. All of them have shown, skill and determination, but equally they've made mistakes in passing or defending or not following through an attack properly, which we've covered all these bits and pieces really in the discussion up to now, in some shape or form. The one player who has disappointed me without anything else has been Madsen, and again we've talked about this. I know he's been played out of position in that DM role, but I expected him to be better there than he was. After all, he is a professional player. Um, but the players who please me, I think, without a doubt, is one that Joe's mentioned, Frey, and I do think Nardi as well. I mean, the latter because he's really been what we've always wanted. He's cool under pressure, good with ball distribution, and he's excellent with his saves. I mean, his saves are really, really good. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
if we had 10 more with the same level of skills and determination as him starting each match, we'd be up with Burnley by now. So, anyway, in the next couple of weeks, we'll be playing Portsmouth and Coventry at home and Burnley away. Uh, no championship fixtures can be regarded as easy. We proved that. But I think you'd agree that Burnley will be a particular challenge. Don't you think so, Joe?
Yeah, I think so. Might just be a damage limitation job. Although I do think Burnley at the top end of the picture are not as good a side as I think people may believe. I don't think Foster's a fantastic goal scorer. I don't think the backups that they have, they've got a Benin international, Hulatunji or something like that. I don't think he's shown an enormous amount so far this season, but they're very good in midfield, and they've got some very interesting wide players, particularly Koleosho. And I think they'll cause us too many problems, and we'll lose the game probably to them.
Yeah, I mean, Matt, do you think that we're playing Burnley at just about the wrong time for us, straight after the international break, after we've had three matches that we've lost?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Yeah, good point that Joe made. Tony Osho's did, of course, havoc down the flank, and Brownhill, he's started impressively this season as well. And with our midfield not connecting, I think Brownhill would just make use of that big time. So a bit worried about that one. They're not as free flowing as they were under Vincent Company.
No,
But with Stock Parker, I think they're more focused on a much more slower build up. Um,
more
really.
result.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so I think we try and I think might as well do a back five for that game, I think, and try and get a point. But yeah, a bit worried about that one.
Okay, so Matt, what about Portsmouth and Coventry? Do you think these are ones that perhaps we should be looking, perhaps, although they're more physical, probably. I think they will be more physical. And I know they are seem to struggle against sides that are physical. But do you think these are ones that we should be aiming to win?
Yeah, big time. Yeah, Portsmouth for sure. They haven't won a game yet this season. I know they're new to the league, but it's got to be one that we got to target to win. We haven't won a game at home this season, so it's a tale of two teams struggling, similar to Derby. Um, and no doubt they'll be physical. They'll make it difficult, especially at set pieces. But um, you're at home to try and attack teams, and we've got to try and show the capabilities of attacking with the wide areas. Chair should be at least fully fit come when that comes around, so he'll be a place of starting. I reckon, and I think he might do that, Marty, just to put him in and just to get him going. Yeah, that's a big one. And at Coventry, they haven't really got going either this season. That they had a good one last season. They made the FA Cup semi-finals as well, so they had a good season last season. Almost this season, they've sort of had a backlash from that, and they started slowly this season. Um, and yeah, these next two home games are pretty massive, to be fair. I know it's still early on, but um,
They are.
it's yeah, it's massive in terms of trying to get the confidence back in the players and in the fans to sort of, if they can still back Marty, he's got so much credit still what he did last season. But yeah, if we don't win these next two home games going into Burnley, then Marty will be he will be under pressure for sure.
Yeah. And Joe, you feel the same way, I'm sure?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, particularly on the Coventry point that they've not got it going either. I think they're another one that could do with a formation change if they move to a back three like they played a couple of years ago. I think Robbins might see his team move up the division a bit more. Portsmouth is it's a big game. It's a very big game, and I think, like I say, any poor result in that, which would be a draw or a defeat, um, would leave everyone in a very difficult position because Marty would come under some accountability. I think people wouldn't necessarily turn on Nuri, but he would face a lot of criticism for his recruitment. And obviously, the players on the pitch are gonna experience a backlash as well because they are the sort of games that you should be winning. I do look at Portsmouth's midfield and think that perhaps actually we do have a better midfield on paper than them, and they are vulnerable at the back. I mean, any side that concedes six away to Stoke
Yeah,
is is an alarming team. Um, if you can take 4 points from Portsmouth and Coventry, I think the conversation may begin to change. If you're taking two, if you're taking less, then even if you take three, maybe you could be in a
Difficult.
the conversation is only going to go intensify.
Yeah, I mean, I think now that the hardest team we have to beat really is our own.
Hmm.
Overcome our shortcomings in all areas and gain enough confidence to start playing well. After that challenge, even the Burnleys, Sunderlands, and Boroughs of this world will seem less of an impossibility to beat and instead more of a challenge. So let's hope Marty gets this all sorted out during the international break. We're going to switch now to talk about a more club-focused discussion. Matt, I know you attended the latest fans forum for Hoops and Dreams,
yeah,
and I'll quickly go over if I may the items that were covered, and then you can perhaps give us a bit of an insight from that. First topic was ticketing. Then they went on to stadium catering, a new stadium, of course, FFP. QPR's charitable arm in the community, QPR Plus was mentioned, away travel, the commercial side of things, including branding and revenue opportunities. And then they went into a general discussion, including how we use analytics to select the players and a sole strategy that they wanted to bring in from the under eights right the way up through the academy, so that we had a standardized way of playing, which seemed to make sense. Scheduling, mostly about the hated 12:30 starts. Um, political around the impact of the football regulator, the dreaded football regulator coming in. And finally, Andy Sinton had a Q&A with Christian Norrie. So do you want to give us your thoughts on the evening, Matt, whilst we still got time?
yeah. I think at the time, I know recent results hasn't been great, but at the time, seeing the confirmation of Marty's stay being extended, Dembele being made permanent, and
Clark,
Clark Salter as well. Yeah, that was all positive at the time. It was very quick from Norrie to do that, and it put the atmosphere in a good place. But recent results, it hasn't. People go like, "Oh, okay, it might have been a jinx, but in terms of their long term futures, they'll be massive for us going forward. In terms of the other issues, I think Norrie was very focused on trying to restrict any sort of plans going forward in terms of we're going to pay for players, or we got to focus on FFP in this moment in time. And as a fan base, we've got to try and stay patient as much as we can. We're getting these players in, like you said, on a data basis, and it's just the way things are nowadays. You look at match stats in football, they look at
yeah,
XG, chances created, and that sort of thing, and they look for that in every player profile. And I think it's just going to take time for fans to get used to that sort of way of buying players in the transfer window, and it's not going to be like a certain bid to a certain player. So there'll be a whole process, and Norrie had that aim from the get-go since he got here, and he will continue to do that. So um, I met him in two sessions, one afterwards, where
Oh,
it was more like about five, six fans. Yeah. Um,
I
it was
know,
like a
I know you're going to
one-on-one.
probably be restricted on what you can say about that, but was it useful, that extra session?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because fans were asking, we want to meet Marty in one of these fan forums at some point. Um, yeah, often in the past, you had Warburton, and Beale appeared in the first forum as well when he arrived. So I haven't
Gareth was
seen him
there
at a
last year
forum
as well.
yet.
Mm.
Gareth
Yeah,
was there this year as well.
Gareth is there as well. So yeah,
Is-
so Norrie hasn't had the chance to do that yet. So they were sort of questioning where can we meet Marty? We haven't met him since he's been at the club. So that was a little concern. Um, but yeah, that was about it from that sort of session there, really.
I mean, Joe, I mean, obviously you felt very happy, I'm sure, about the orchestrated contract signings and announcements.
Yeah.
But were did you get the nuance about Christian Norrie effectively taking over the director of football role as well?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting
Yeah,
decision. I wonder whether some of that might be financial, actually. They might have decided that we'll just blend the two roles together rather than paying two salaries out. Um, I do think that there are some questions around him. I don't think there's a transparency necessarily to his career, that the
yeah,
company that he works for, you try and find some information on them online, and they've got a rather small website that doesn't really concede a lot of information.
true.
And I've listened to a couple of the interviews of the guy that runs it, Charles Gould. Some of the interviews he's done with the Athletic, some of the points he makes in them are a bit questionable as well. For instance, he says that they found in research that clubs that have an elected president don't tend to produce don't tend to have as fruitful academies. That Barcelona have an elected president, and La Masia is the envy of the world in terms of its academy production. So there are little things here and there that I'm a bit concerned with. I think there, like I said, there are questions to be asked. Who's going to ask those questions? I don't know. Going back to those contract situations, though, I they felt very populist in their
Yeah,
league, in the sense that there are bad things going on the pitch. So here's a bar of chocolate, kids. Sit in the corner and just be happy with that. The other thing I will say about the forum is that I actually think it was the wrong way around. And I think Nuri felt this himself from the start. I actually think he wanted to hear more from fans than perhaps
Yeah,
fans wanted to hear from him. I actually think if it was the other way around and the mics had just been given to the fans and it had been a case of, okay, tell me what's wrong with this football club and what we can improve and what you like, then actually we might have got more out of the forum. So essentially, you would have to run that as like an American town hall in American politics. But being able to do that is difficult because you're going to have certain people that take the mic all the time. The points that are going to be made are not necessarily going to have coherence, and you're going to have wild things raised. Like one of the questions was about a bit housing on Old Oak Common, which is quite a bizarre
yeah,
thing to raise in the
was
forum
an
at that
odd one.
point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so it's difficult, but I did have some sympathy towards him because, like I say, he's new into the club. Within a year, there's only less than a year. There's only so much you're going to be able to do, and I do think, like I say, the forum was the wrong way around. It should have been fans talking to him as opposed to him talking to fans.
So
yeah. I agree.
at
I agree.
in the discussion afterwards, did that happen? Was it the other way round? Were you asking him questions and him replying?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. It was like a 10, 15 sort of minute session. Um, yeah, there's about five, six of us sort of there. Um, he was saying that he hasn't had, in terms of media, he's had quite a few interviews. He had one with BBC London Sport. Um, and he did mention he had an interview with West London Sport for like an hour, but that didn't get released.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, and that's sort of it was all like, oh, okay, that's interesting. And I don't know if you've noticed, West London Sport haven't posted anything about us recently. It's all been Chelsea, Fulham, Brentford, and I'm thinking like from that moment on, has that been sort of the moment where Norrie doesn't want anything to do, or QPR doesn't want anything to do with West London Sport. So in terms of like media sort of base around him has been quite restricted. And like Joe said, he hasn't had the chance to uh, express what he really thinks. He's normally answering questions that people online are saying, and most of the time, I wasn't really agreeing with the questions. If you've noticed, he's sort of like trying to say something, but they weren't really like he was saying stuff, but they weren't really fully making sense. It was sort of like trying to fill gaps to fill up the time. And I noticed that in the forum that most of the time in forums you get to pass the mic to fans. Like it's normally like five, six people. There's only like a couple, and that was it.
Yeah.
So that was a very new way of doing things. So that was pretty interesting. That.
Yeah. Thanks for that. I mean, I'm glad you went. I was disappointed I was away and I couldn't go, but
No problem at all.
I mean, it was obviously a worthwhile exercise. I mean, for me, on the Hoops and Dreams, I've been saying, on the forum there for ages and ages, we need to get the contract sorted out for Xavi and Marty. They had to be done, and I'm delighted they got those done. And obviously, to some degree, also for Clark Salter and Dembele, getting those done. So that's great. It did seem orchestrated. In a way, I don't blame the club. As Joe said, we need to be thrown a few juicy bones every so often. Otherwise, we do get rather aggressive. So it's good. We're building blocks here. We just need to make those blocks get into the right alignment. That's the problem we've got at the moment. Well, I think that's about it for our time. It's been well and truly spent, I think, trying to work out what's wrong with the club and hoping that that Marty's actually going to watch this and come up with the 4-3-3 that we want. Or what was it? It was a 3-4.
3-4-3, yeah.
3-4-3, yeah.
Which is quite interesting, I think. Anyway, so
I think at this point I'll try any formation just to get us great chances.
Okay,
Yeah,
well,
it works.
thanks very much. That's our second Rangers roundup of the season, and so I'd like to quickly thank my guest presenter Matt and guest Joe. Thank you very much for coming on, both of you. Really appreciate it. Editor James, as always, and all of you for spending the time with us. It's been quite a long one, but hopefully it's been enjoyable. If you're watching this on our YouTube channel, please do click on subscribe, and perhaps you can also add a comment or two below. We're always watching this and we will respond. We're back for another Rangers roundup later in the season when there's another international break. Meanwhile, look out for our regular preview podcast before each fixture and any specials when we chat to players or others at the club or when we ask fans questions. And in fact, we've got a fans question coming up very shortly with a guest. I'm really looking forward to doing this one. So you'll get this in a few days as well. I'm Brian Fisher, and this has been a Hoops and Dreams QPR podcast. Come on, you R's.
We know who we are. You know who we are. We are QPR.